1000 BCE to 300 BCE was a time in Japanese history known as the Jomon Period, meaning straw rope or rope pattern. And straw rope is significant for what we're going to be talking about, so just keep that in mind. So to give us a timeline, the Jomon Period is broken up into 6 periods. And to simplify that for us, we have the very early Jomon, early, middle, late, and final Jomon periods. And during the very early Jomon periods is when nomadic hunters and gatherers started to settle down in the Japanese islands. So before 10,000 BCE, the Japanese islands were connected to the mainland, so one strip of land. But 10,000 BC onward, warming started to significantly rise the sea levels so that the southern islands became separated from the mainland. The early humans who inhabited these islands were thought to be nomadic, as many early humans were, which means they moved following a food source. But later they would settle down, domesticate animals, and start practicing organized farming. They settled in simple homes similar to Neolithic Chinese cultures, with thatched roofs weaved on top of a timber structure that covered a dug hole in the ground. These are also known as pit dwellings, and some of these dwellings were dug to about 3 feet deep. Now, the Jomon period is also when humans began making the oldest pottery that has been found in Japan. And it's some of the oldest pottery that's been found in the world. These are simple ceramic wares called Jomon Pots. And these early ceramics may have been used to store food, water, or to cook in. Some of the very early ceramics had these very strange pointed bottoms, kind of like a cone shape, that would have most likely been stuck in the ground. Because these vessels were very unstable and they would have had to be stabilized in some way. The very first of these Jomon pots were very simple in style. They were made using the coil method, which means they were made by hand, and baked in the sun and later would have been baked over an open fire. So looking closely, we see small designs. These designs were made by using twine, grass, rope, and in some cases sticks were used to carve into the wet clay. The materials I mentioned would have been imprinted into the wet clay. Then the pots would have been dried in the sun or over an open fire. Thus, the name Jomon, meaning straw rope, is named for the use of rope to imprint patterns on the pottery. And we see a lot of evidence of rope being used in the early and middle Jomon periods. So the pots get a distinct style from the patterns of the rope, twine, and in some cases sticks. So let's move on to the middle Jomon period, and that's about 2,500 to 1,500 BCE. And we still see the imprinting from the materials being used on the vessels. The longer and more narrow pots are believed to have been used to store and cook food in. But we also start seeing much more elaborately decorated pots that we call flameware. Now these pots have a flat bottom. That's important, because flat bottoms are better for balancing on flat surfaces, like a table. These pots are also made using the coil clay method, and they would have been fired over an open fire, which was heated to about 600 to 900 degrees Celsius. As we can see, the decorations of these flamewares are much more intricate and top-heavy. They are starting to become an artwork in itself. In fact, we see how in some cases the coils of the clay are used to create decorations. These vessels are covered in applied thin rolls of clay to form lines, swirls, and crests. In some cases, the crests create large arches with holes carved into them. These decorations are becoming so sculptural and lifting off of the vessel. Although many of the vessels were used for cooking, art historians also believe that in some cases the more decorative pots are being used for ritualistic purposes rather than for storing and cooking foods. So these sculptural pots are taking on a look of something other than a utilized vessel. So let's move on to the late Jomon period, and that's about 1,500 to 1,000 BCE. The pots are taking on different shapes from what we have seen in the past, but the decorations are becoming more simple. And during the final Jomon period, and that's about 1,300 BCE, strangely the decorations become minimalized in style, and in some regions the vessels begin disappearing altogether. So the Jomon period is actually a very mysterious time period in Japanese history. So much of what we believe the vessels are used for is speculation, and not much is known about the people alive in that time period. However, they left these wonderful, amazing ceramics for us to now enjoy, and today Japan is still known for its wonderful ceramics.